let's move on to education. What is your plan to improve education in this country? And specifically, what are your positions on Head Start, public school choice, for-profit charter schools like Achievement First? And do you support equal funding for all schools regardless of the district's property value?
By the way, I'm sorry, before we go further, we should have got this and didn't. The charter schools like Achievement First say they're not for profit. They're not for profit, but they're funded by organizations like Goldman Sachs, and they're very much corporate supported school hedge funds.
Which means they're for profit.
Yeah.
In that sense.
This is the one area where I feel like I have a lot of experience, having been a mayor of the city for 8 years and worked on a lot of these issues. So I would try not to give a really long answer, but I have really strong feelings about almost everything that's in this question. I think first and foremost, we have to be serious about investments in early childhood education. It's the best investment we can make in terms of educational outcomes. We make up for it and spend a lot more money later on by not investing in it properly. And I was very proud that we were able to successfully advocate for Rhode Island for the Early Childhood Challenge Grant, which we were one of only, I think, 2 or 3 states that got both the Race to the Top and this Early Childhood Education Grant, which is a real investment of $50 million in early childhood education. I think it's really important that we do that for every child in this country. And even if you don't care about the kids and all you care about is the money, it's still a really smart thing to do because we're spending an enormous amount of money on education. Let's make sure we're maximizing the return on our investment. And I also think that it's very important that we really think about education in the way that we've tried to think about it in Providence with the Providence After School Alliance, and that is building a system that takes care of kids from the moment they get up in the morning to the moment they go to bed at night. That it's not a system anymore, we have a school calendar that is based on an agricultural calendar, where kids used to work in the fields and work on farms, which is not the case for most kids anymore in urban areas or most areas, and we've never really changed even the time at which we deliver education to kids. But I think more than just the timing of it, we have a responsibility to create a learning environment that includes really a whole range of before school, after school, learning opportunities outside of school and lots of other areas, but really the way we've done it with the Providence After School Alliance with after zones, which are hundreds of partners providing opportunities from sailing to art class to homework club, but really understanding that our kids need that kind of support and that it's not that parents who can't provide it love them any less than the other parents, but they're working 2 and 3 jobs. And there's virtually, it's very hard for one parent to support a family today. It's almost always the case that 2 parents have to work. And so we as a community have a responsibility to sort of fill in this support and I think a different kind of educational model. I'm a product of public schools. I went to public schools for my whole K through 12 education. I'm a big believer in public schools. I think charter schools, there are some great examples of charter schools. But one of my frustrations with charter schools has always been the idea behind them is supposed to be a place for innovation and new ideas, which is great. But the real value is to take those lessons learned and scale it up to the public school system so that it's not just available to 30 kids who go to the system, but to the whole public school system. There are a lot of reasons that doesn't happen. Some of it is just sort of the kind of tension between the two and the distrust and stuff. One of the things I tried to do when I was mayor was create a council of all the schools in the state, religious schools, charter schools, public schools, to just force the conversation so that people would build relationships and get to know each other so that when something really great was happening at Cuffy, they would learn about it and be able to use it in the public schools. So I think, I'm not sure, there are great examples. There's some good stuff happening, frankly, between Cuffy and some of the Providence public schools, some really good sharing. So I think in those examples, every kid doesn't learn the same way, and having a portfolio of schools that are all different, that offer different ways of learning, different approaches is great. And seeding some innovations in different kind of environments, I think, is great. But I think we have to recognize that the overwhelming majority of kids will be educated in the public school system, and we have to be quick to take whatever lessons we learn in some of these other venues and scale them up and hold those schools accountable the same way we do our public schools. And I don't have firmly determined, unmovable positions on for-profits and not-for-profits. I've read reports that have suggested there are lots of deficiencies in for-profits and lots of reasons to question where the funding comes from. There are examples of some for-profits that have good outcomes. I think we just have to be really careful about ever going to a point where we start expecting or accepting the notion that there is a private right or worse, obligation to educate our kids. This is a public responsibility. It is one of the great cornerstones of our democracy, and so I just think we have to always be mindful of that and certainly benefit from and welcome the kind of innovations that they can bring sometime, but really, this is a public function.
So, getting into the issue of school choice, do you support it? And if you support it, would you support it for just public schools or allowing private money to go to, or public money to go to kids attending private schools?
No, I don't believe public money should go to kids attending private schools ever. I tried to get our school district not to pay actually for some expenses that get billed to public school systems for private parochial education, which I think is really inappropriate. The concept of school choice is interesting in the public school setting. I think the challenge, the reason I have not supported it traditionally, and I would certainly listen to arguments on it, the reason I have not supported it traditionally is because I think it presumes parents have a set of, both the same ability and the same information to make judgments about their child's education. And for lots of parents who have language barriers, who themselves have educational challenges, the idea of making the decision which is right for their kids is really hard and maybe something that they just can't do because of a whole host. And so I think everyone sort of assumes, oh, this is a system where parents will make the choices that are best for their kids and will weed out bad schools and make, but that presumes a whole set of sharing of information and capability of parents in that setting, which I think is not the same for every kid. So could I imagine there's a public school choice system you could set up where you gave parents a counselor and interpreters to work through all these issues? Maybe, but you'd have to really show me that you were getting all the information so people could make the right decisions. And by the way, our goal ought to be making sure every single school in the public school system is an excellent school, and every child, wherever they go, has access to the same high-quality public education.
So what about the issue of equal funding? Do you support equal funding regardless of a district's property values?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think one of the challenges that we face in Rhode Island and in this country is we have a public school system in most places that is funded principally on property taxes. And so we went from this moment in the Board of Education, Brown versus Board of Education, where we said we couldn't have segregated schools, we now have segregated school districts because of funding. And the wealthiest communities who have the greatest tax base have the ability to make the greatest investments in public education, and the poorest communities that have the most difficult and challenging tax base have the least resources. So it of course should never make a difference that the quality of your education depends on the zip code of your home address. And the system of relying on property taxes is a mistake, and we were, as a state, moving, one thought at one time, to a state funding system which would at least attempt to remove that inequality. We've actually gone in the opposite direction. Now Logan Cheney discredited, I think, is trying to bring us back to there, but I think it's a very, very flawed system.